I gotta remove X as always.
It's a bad habit at this point.
And we are live here. A bad habit. Yeah, definitely. Going live randomly. Here with Dude What's the Bid. We're on episode, what is it, Casey?
23.
23. I love that number. You know the reason why I love this? And it's good because Charlie Dehoney's with us today over at Upwell, and he's sitting in the Chicago airport. You know who number 23 was? It was my idol growing up, Ryan Sandberg.
That guy totally just leaned into it. He really, really was waiting for that, wasn't he?
But yeah, so I mean,
you went Ryan Sandberg, which I mean, for a baseball guy, that's the right application. But we're in Chicago. I think there was only one direction everybody thought you were taking this.
Yeah, Jordan, right? So another famous 23. There's a few others, I think. 23 was a really good number back in, I guess, certainly in the 80s. In the Mets or in the championship series, going to the World Series, hopefully. And yeah, it's just a good October so far.
Favorite time of year. It's the best. Sweater weather is just coming back into focus. College football is becoming real. And baseball is actually interesting.
Yeah. You know, it's great. OU Texas is this weekend. Another highlight of my year. And
there's only one team that I follow. San Jose State Spartans.
Oh, nice. Michigan State.
San Jose State.
Oh, San Jose State.
Yeah,
I couldn't make out the tattoo.
I just ran into a Spartan here at the ORD airport. Just talked to a Spartan football.
Oh, really?
So
nice.
Love to hear it.
Cool. Very cool. Well, Charlie, thanks for joining us today. I want to learn more about Upwell, what you guys are doing, and get the ball rolling. First of all, though, you want to talk a little bit about freight rates and maybe the freight market, and if the hurricanes have kind of moved it at all, or what we're seeing out there.
You know, we sell to brokers and carriers, and we're certainly seeing the ebbs and flows of the market. I think most of us are hoping that this, sort of disaster relief stuff is going to be the tipping point that sends us on that arc. But I would say by and large, our sense is we're finding that brokers, carriers, they're leveraging technologies like ours because they're doing more with less as a direct result of the rates staying so low for so long. So I don't know about you guys. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm not seeing any green shoots. I'm not seeing any of these like really, really positive signals that tell me the fourth quarter of 24 is the end of the end. So I think just like everybody else, I'm just sitting here watching cautiously, patiently, and wondering when we're going to see this trough and what it is it's going to be that gets us out of it.
Yeah, I've always been kind of a perma bear, and I'm definitely a perma bear right now. I mean, I don't see any green shoots of any significant, maybe a short-term blip, but nothing that is really going to correct any markets.
So, I mean, I want to hear what you think, Casey, because I know you think pricing all day, every day.
I do think about pricing a little bit these days. And it was interesting. I saw a post this morning from a cheeky guy that a lot of folks, I think, see on LinkedIn, Chad Olson over at AVRL.
One of my favorite dudes in the industry, man. If you want an opinion, call Chad.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Guy's got some conviction and may very well, have more spot market bid data than anybody out there. I know he works with a lot of folks on that side of things, but he had a bullish good morning. He said bull morning, I think it was the post on LinkedIn. And I asked him if that meant the bottom is in. And it replied with an insightful reaction. So it got me thinking, and I dove into our rates, what we're seeing over here. freight picked yesterday, starting to see an uptick. If we're just looking at dry vans, see if I can share my screen here, but before, I guess even after Helen hit, right? I'm looking at stuff from just about a week ago. Dry van rates were like $1.94. See an uptick to $2.27 on Monday, and stuff picked yesterday at $2.47 on a rate per mile basis. So I don't know.
That's what we'd expect to see, right? The hurricane, like two storms right in a row. We're going to have to see the market's going to have to jump as a reaction. But I was in Chicago this week, and I was with a lot of asset-based carriers, and they were seeing that there's not the water going into this disaster relief this time. There's not the critical materials. Like, there's just not the amount of relief that we've seen, which is odd. And I don't think we want to get too political on this particular podcast right now, but why is that? Why aren't we seeing these loads? Because there's a lot of freight that people want to get out of there. I was talking to a lot of carriers that they moved their equipment out. A lot of stuff they want to get out. But I was with a big broker yesterday that was picking up 50 loads in the panhandle of Florida. And so plenty of stuff getting out, but he had nothing going back in. And so I don't know if you guys are hearing that, but it was a really interesting week. Last week I was at CSCMP in Nashville during the port strike. This week being out here in Chicago for the Descartes User Summit with all these brokers right during this hurricane relief effort. And it's just a fascinating time to be querying these people, because what we've always seen in the past with this disaster relief is everybody's grabbing a bottle of water, everybody's getting all the equipment, the generators, all that stuff. We're not seeing that stuff go down there.
No. You're not really hearing anything about FEMA loads and
Right.
and any action with that. It's just kind of like business as usual. Everybody gets up. It's sunny today in Florida, and you don't hear too much about the Carolinas and what's happened there, which I think is, it's got to be a very disastrous in some parts of there. But you don't really hear like specific stories and specific images coming out of there as much as you think you would.
I do, but I've been a big X guy for many years, as I know a lot of your X listeners were all tied to Freight X. But I'm getting a lot of real time feedback, a lot of people posting videos from the Carolinas, and yeah, I think what you're seeing from the people on the ground is that you're not seeing that level of relief that's happened in the past. And I think it's just a question that's popped into my mind over the last 48, 72 hours. Is like, what's different about this? Why are we not rushing to this aid? Because we're all in freight. We all know what FEMA loads mean. It's an opportunity. These are windfall moments, and I'd be curious. What the brokers on the street, the real guys that are touching the freight right now, that are listening to this, what do they think? What do they see?
Same here. Because as you said, there's just. I remember past hurricanes and FEMA and relief, and it was a huge storyline in the mainstream, outside of freight. But I'm just not hearing it outside of freight. I'm not hearing too much about those situations whatsoever.
Well, and let's be honest. As brokers, we need the sharps. We need the ups and the downs. That's how we make our money.
Yeah.
And so when the market is not moving as volatilely as we'd like it to, I think it begs the question, what's happening?
It does. It really does. It begs that question. And because these are opportunities, right? This can make or break a year. If rates shot up for the month of October, let's say, it can make or break a year. And you don't see these volatility spikes whatsoever about any event. And it's just strange. Just overall strange.
I don't know. I guess there's some speculation that there's no more funds, right, from FEMA, or they're having a hard time getting funds together. It's been spent on maybe the border or other initiatives.
So I'm hearing the same thing, Casey, that these FEMA funds have been depleted, and the investments our government's made in the border and over in Ukraine. I'm hearing these same things. I guess one thing I struggle with, and you guys are probably the same, is especially during, I don't watch politics until election season comes up. And then I get super enthralled with it, and it's all interesting. And the whole country is either going to be way better off or terrible, depending on the outcome and how you sit. And
Mhm.
I've always tried to just live in the middle of these things, and I feel like if you're on too far one
Yeah.
way or the other, like you're actually the problem, and the rest of us are trying to kind of get you back to the middle so we can communicate. But I think in these moments, I just don't know what to believe. I don't know what the root cause is, but I just know that when we look at the data and we see in the freight market, all three of us who pay that attention to this stuff every day, we're not hearing about FEMA loans. And if we were, our friends would be telling us about it, right?
Yep.
I mean, you would know. So just, I will look forward to late November when we all just go back to work and moving freight and stop and talking about, well, what's going on in Washington.
For real.
I agree with that, because money's you can make money no matter what, right? It's all up to you. You control your own destiny. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't. A lot of these things really don't matter. You just have to navigate those waters. And if you own a business, then you really have to navigate those waters, because those are things you don't control. You only control what you're doing every single day. So,
well, I think we all feel as brokers. I mean, the reason why we're all reaching and looking for this predictability is we just want to know what market are we in. Where are we going to be? Because we all know how to adjust and make money in those different circumstances. There's a different strategy and approach for each of these market types, and I think we're all just waiting for when are we going to see the good days come back around. But I will tell you, when I started my first brokerage company, when I left World Express in like 2007, 2008 range, I remember my customers telling me all the time, like, man, you're doing so great, Charlie. When the market turns around, you're really going to be taking off. And I think to myself, like, shit, I don't know if the market's up or down, because I'm just a little freight broker that's out moving freight every day. And I knew I just need to get my 10, 20, 50 loads a day, and like my organization is going to be okay. So I think, if you get too caught up in the market one way or the other, you might not be doing enough to grow, right? Because if the market is the reason why you're not growing, there's probably some other levers that could be pulled.
But there definitely is, right? And you're giving your success or giving your results over to the market is never a good thing. It's just never a good thing, because it gives you a great excuse.
Yeah, I will say that I agree 100%. But the other thing that you learn as you get a little bit older is you're never going to outmuscle a market, right? I mean, you could go in and you can through hand-to-hand combat, blood, sweat, and tears, you can get your piece.
Yes.
But if the market is down, and we're seeing this with the publicly traded guys that are looking at changing their strategy, the folks that have been waiting to IPO that are just going to have to keep pushing. It's trickling down to the early stage, the venture capital markets, as these publicly traded companies, I think the industry is still wondering, hey, once this AI revolution takes off, what is a SaaS company going to be worth? Because is AI going to disrupt all of these SaaS companies that are out there? So, as somebody who's building an early stage SaaS company, I'm trying to keep all of my options open so that over time I can make sure that if valuations don't stay high in SaaS like they have, that we still have options for our business. So I think these are moments where, going back to kind of round that out, that when you're young, like I was when I started my first brokerage, I just didn't know the industry. I didn't know the market. I just knew how to sell freight. But then as you get a little bit older and you get a little bit more perspective, you realize, luck and timing are as much part of anything else that's successful as intelligence and work ethic.
It really is. And it goes back to what the market's doing, right? If you're riding high on a great market, you're not a genius. You're just riding that wave, right? And if you're riding low on a low market, you're not a failure, right? You just have to worry about what you can control and know the market. And yeah, it's strange, knowing your business and then knowing the industry, right? And the valuations, you get to that stage of it, and being aware of that and building a strategy around that as much as anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go Casey.
So, there's companies growing in this down market too, right? I see some folks, and I know, Kevin, you just did this research report. There are a lot of companies that are doing very well, adding headcount, adding customers, probably just doing things better than everybody else, right? Like not buying trucks at a loss, servicing their customers really well, and sure they're getting paid on time too, you know?
And there's no better way, no better timing. We're talking about timing, right? There's no better timing to start a business than in a down market.
When I left Worldwide Express and I decided to start my company, and people are telling me, hey, this is a terrible industry, terrible market. But I thought to myself, like, if I could build a business in this down economy, when things turn around, that's when some sucker is going to come along and he wants to cash out his 401k and he's going to like buy a job for himself. And if I have one ready for him, like, it'll be a profitable business and he can have it. And so I sold 2 companies in 2014, exactly under that same circumstance, and I built both of those companies through that downturn. And I would say, as I start to think about segueing into like what we're doing here at Upwell, the biggest motivator, there was actually a couple of real catalysts here around why I decided to start Upwell. Number one, I was working with some of the largest logistics companies in the world, helping them identify opportunities for digitization and advancing their business. And there was a lot of folks that were looking for order to cash applications, which is the software category that I'm in, and we couldn't find anything. So there are some horizontal players out there like HighRadius and BillTrust and VersaPay that provide order to cash solutions for every industry. Mm-hmm. But as we all know, the details are the devil in logistics, and the same dependencies on documents and shipper references, all of the basic fundamentals that we've learned as brokers have to be executed on the back end on the billing side, and off-the-shelf applications don't work because they don't recognize freight documents. They don't know the difference between these things. So as I started thinking about building the company, I knew that the space was opening up. I knew that CFOs were looking for order to cash tools, and there wasn't something that was built purposely for the industry. So that was extremely exciting to me. And the second category, the second part of the second catalyst, the second big trigger was, as inflation continued to increase, the cost of capital got wild. And brokers who are in very low margin businesses in a very high velocity environment have a hard time procuring capital. So I knew if we could provide a mechanism for them to clean up their finances, and we could then share that data with lending partners, there was an opportunity to put money to work in transportation in a way that was very integrated through technology and was meeting these people in the workflows that they're doing. So the inflationary environment was 100% the reason why I wanted to help people catch their own money, because in a recession, the cheapest capital is yours. And it's right now probably sitting in your carrier's accounts or your customer's accounts because you're paying early or you're collecting late. And that float right there creates a lot of leverage and a lot of confidence. And you can get that working capital that's spread out to a million different places sitting in your bank account. You can say yes to the next hire. You can think about upgrading your office. You can think about acquiring that next piece of technology or taking advantage of whatever opportunity. But then the third big trigger that really stood out and just made this an absolute no-brainer is with the advancement of the large language models and AI. I just knew that we could bring our product to the market much faster than we would have been able to 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And if we're all being honest, guys, nobody in our business gives a shit about the technology. We all care about, did I book more loads as a result today? Did I get off on time? And if I didn't make more money and I had to stay late, you're trash. You're dead. It's vaporware. I don't need it. So we have the opportunity right now to bring technology solutions to the market in a much faster way because of these large language models, because of AI that's enabling us to automate processes that are human laden today and put more money in the bank account and help these companies build that confidence that comes with that commercialization. So when you start to line up those type of value propositions, as guys like us that have spent our entire lives in the broker space and around this, you start to think, well, that's kind of a no-brainer for everybody. It's worth taking a shot.
It definitely is. It definitely is. And I think you explained most of it, but specifically when you say order to cash, what does that kind of cover? What's the pitch on that?
So think about, as a freight broker, how much work and energy goes into the load to get paid after the freight's been delivered. So it starts with receiving those documents from the carrier. You've got to get the carrier invoice, the lading organized. Those have to get into the TMS. You have to stand up the payable to pay the carrier. You have to build the invoice to invoice the shipper. And every shipper has 2 to 5 things that you have to do on their bill to match and get you paid. So What we do at Upwell is we actually capture all of those shipper rules, and we're building the biggest catalog of invoicing requirements that the industry's ever had. So if you're working with the major retailers, we're already invoicing them. We know how to format the invoice, where to send the invoice, and what identifiers to pass along to make sure you get paid on time. Because the number one reason why invoices don't get paid on time is not because the shippers don't want to pay you. They want the truck to show up. Our best customers want us to thrive. But if you don't invoice them correctly, that payment's going to sit up in some cloud portal. And when I first started, you would email an invoice and you get the benefit of the doubt, right? Kathy or Peggy would pick up the phone and give you a call and say, hey, Charlie, when you work with us, you've got to hit this reference number. You've got to have this. But now you're sending invoices up into a cloud, and they're just sitting out there going, not aging, not getting paid. And you have to have a human on your team to go out and retrieve that status and figure out what's going on with that payment. So what we do is we are the single source of truth for these revenue teams. So after that freight is delivered, all the documents come into Upwell. Upwell's AI is going to start to recognize which documents those are, put them in the right place in the TMS. And then we use AI to audit against all of those data points that shipper requires. So there's a shipper record in Upwell with all these unique requirements. And if you're invoicing Target, and Target requires a bill of lading with a particular stamp on there, a signature, and reference numbers that begin with this specific schema, all of those rules can be tied into Upwell. And so Upwell is going to use AI to audit that invoice before it's generated. So if we use the same standards that they audit us against before we send the invoice to them, the freight audit company is going to have less to go after, less waste in the process, because the invoice is going to be accurate, complete, and thorough. So we do everything from the pre-invoice audit to the generation of the invoice. We deliver the invoice. We integrate with all the major payment portals like Cass, US Bank, Uber Freight, helping the brokers get paid faster through those folks. We present credit card and ACH options to all of the customers so that your customers as a broker can have a payment portal where they can go tick a box and pay their invoices, like a Bill.com solution for our business. And then we also do all the past due reminders. Those annoying knock on the door email, your invoice is past due. We have like a MailChimp or a constant contact functionality built out where you can make an aggressive workflow or an aggressive campaign for your long tail customers that just slow pay and they're an SMB customer. And if they come back, great. If not, just get your money and move. But then you can have a no-touch campaign for Walmart and IBM where you're not going to email them. But most of your mid-market customers who you'd like to be very respectful to and just kind of gently remind them that they missed an invoice, we automate those past due reminders. We automate the weekly statement sending out. So as a general rule, I always felt like my best customers who wanted to pay me would always pay me on time if they knew that they had the bill. But by not sending those statements, which is a manual process in a lot of TMS workflows today, by not sending those statements, that one missed invoice can then get buried by all the other subsequent invoices, and it's going and chasing that one invoice down long after the freight's been delivered and nobody's remembering the load anymore. Those are the types of things that really, really eat me away at choosing a broker, and it really becomes death by a thousand cuts. So when I really started wanting to build this application, I was calling all these big CFOs of these big transportation companies and saying, hey, like, what is the one or two things that I can build for you that'll get you excited? And what I realized is to build one of them, you have to build all of them. So we set out to build a very large AI-enabled accounting and a box platform for brokers, and it's starting to go very well.
Yeah, so when you talk about like this master is kind of like a master database of shippers. So if I bring on a new customer or I haven't dealt with somebody in a while, I don't have to go in and refigure out that specific shipper's rules and requirements. You already have it loaded in there, so you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's without having to do that. And I guess another big selling point on that is if you have any turnover in your accounting department, they don't have to relearn that kind of tribal knowledge in a way, right?
So as a broker, Kevin, there was this very common chain of events that would happen. My wife, who was my business partner and was always looking at the back of the house, would come to me and say, Charlie, we're running low on money and we have payroll on Thursday. We need to get some cash. And I would say, oh, that can't be. No way. and I would go to my accounting person. I would say, can you please run me an accounts receivable report? And she'd say, yeah, give me about 6 hours. I've got to post all the cash from today, and I've got to clean everything up. And there was no way to just touch a button and get a receivable report.
Mhm.
So then, after the receivable report, I didn't get it, and I go try to find this woman, and she's out on a smoke break, and then she comes back. And next thing you know, it's like at the end of the day, I get my receivable report, and I look at it the next day, I'm like, holy shit, why does this guy owe me 15 grand? This guy owes me 10 grand. So then next thing you know, I'm on the phone with all my customers, and I'm saying, hey, you missed a few invoices. They're, what invoice? I don't have those. I'm like, well, hey, did we send out statements in the last couple of weeks? I don't know. No. So it's long, it's hard, it's manual. Okay, so you need all these 10 invoices. And it wasn't because it wasn't because we didn't know how to invoice. It was because the invoicing person that knew their rules, that knew how to invoice that one customer, was out. And then you got the other person that comes in and they send the invoice to the wrong person because it's all tribal knowledge. And what I hated was my TMS and my accounting software didn't talk to each other, and there was no place for these rules to live. So we had to build that part of it first at Upwell. And so what we're able to do is, as we aggregate, we bring on more brokers and carriers, we're now getting help from the crowd. So when somebody comes on board and they're invoicing Home Depot, and we've just passed along $17 million Home Depot invoices in the last 90 days, you can rest assured that when they integrate with Upwell, they're just going to associate that Home Depot a receivable record to their Home Depot customer in our database, and they're going to be able to execute that invoicing workflow. But we do a lot more than just get the invoice out to where it needs to go, because a certain percentage of these invoices, usually we see like somewhere between 20-25%, require some work after the invoice comes out of the TMS. So as an example, we have a lot of clients that have customers that require the bill of lading to be separate from the freight bill, and just having 2 PDFs versus 1 PDF, and that PDF needs to be labeled using the identifier that was passed back by this retailer. And what I found is that the reason you have to do that is so that their automation on the other side can pick up this bill and get it matched, because there's no humans opening invoices anymore. This is all AI. So what we decided to do was, if we build those standards and we can audit that invoice and we can make sure that it goes out, and we can get a signal back from the platform that we're invoicing, and it says invoice received, payment will happen on this date, that if we could use AI to do all of those things, that there was going to be a lot of people that were freed up from just the status retrieval piece of it, and that they were able to go out and work on the exceptions. And we all know what these exceptions are. You guys have been familiar with these. It's something that happened during the load that changed the price, or the load was canceled and there was a tonneau associated it, and then they use the same order number, and it just creates all these bottlenecks in the back office. And so in our platform, these custom invoice generation tools, the ability to change the way that we splice the documents, label the documents, manipulate the subject line of the email, these wicked requirements that shippers impose on these logistics companies, we can automate those things and just take those parts of it away. And the really cool part is since we sell to these back office superheroes, these people who have spent 20 years in logistics helping get paid, is when they get to Upwell and they see this integration screen that we have, they're able to click on their TMS and enter their username and password. They're able to click on their accounting software and do the same thing, as well as all these AP portals. And so once they have all these tools integrated into one place, we're really providing these people something that they've wanted and they've thought about for many years, but nobody's come along with it. And so I think that's like the most fun and exciting part is structurally, everybody in logistics, the CFO, the CEO, they know we want to do more with less. We want to get our money faster. If you can reduce my cost of capital, that's a great thing. So that gets us in the door pretty easily. It's a very clear value proposition. But what really helps us grow and scale inside these companies is finding those superheroes. They're the keepers of all the secrets. They know where every body is buried in the organization. They know who your biggest customer is and who the biggest pain in the ass is from the back office perspective. And these are the people that as sales guys are always trying to snowball, because early on you're out there and you're making the deal and you say yes to everything the customer wants. And then this person comes to you and says, hey, I don't think we're making money on this. I got 5 people doing their bills. And as a sales guy, it's fine. We'll say,
of course.
Yeah. But the reality is that people aren't sending stuff near shore anymore. There was this huge movement to send everything with these BPOs 5 years ago. And I think we ran into it limitations. I think we know what we get. There's certain functions, certain roles that are over there that are very valuable. But accounting and finance, FP&A, that's something that is sitting here in North America. And so we're really, really going after those folks that are just moving documents around right now and doing stuff that they hate to do. Taking that stuff off their plate and letting them get down into like the real blocking and tackling, figuring out what's wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean that's a really good use case for AI. I know everyone's been trying to find use case for it, to be able to talk about it concretely, because you have, it's a buzzword again. As they travel in and out of a freight is AI, but how do I really use it? And I think a lot of people are trying to figure that out right now.
I think what I hear all the time, and so I was at the Trimble user conference just a few weeks ago, and I sat on a panel with Chad and Anthony from Parade, and a number of like really interesting folks. And the topic was AI and logistics. And this is really funny, guys. We had 90 procurement professionals that when we kicked off this topic, the moderator said, "Hey, raise your hand if your job is to buy technology for a logistics company." The entire room raised their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And at these events, the panel on the last day, like nobody goes, but this room was full. So like it shows you there's a real appetite for AI. People wanted to figure it out. But of these 90 plus people that raised their hand, the moderator then said, "Hey, raise your hand if you're using AI in your business." And everybody kept their hand up. He said, "Raise your hand if you're not using Grammarly or one of these off-the-shelf platforms. Raise your hand if you've deployed AI on your servers and you're automating workflows in your business today." And the reality is, guys, like, I don't expect our colleagues in logistics to go out there and be on the bleeding edge of deployment of these solutions. It's our job. We have to do it. We have to make it. And we have to make it easy. We have to hold their hand, and we have to integrate into their systems, and we have to meet them where they are. We have to give them no extra sites to go into, because everybody has password fatigue. And the swivel chair model has to get fixed. So the future is headless. The future is APIs. The future is bring the data into the platform that they're operating in today and just make it work. And this is the right application for AI, is because AI is wonderful at extracting data, matching data, taking the next step or two once those patterns have been recognized. And I think in our business, I stay committed every single day of thinking about new ways to bring solutions that are happening in other parts of our life, technologies that we're already using on our mobile device or in other areas, and just bring that to this workflow. Make people's life easy.
It does. I mean, there's this really, you talk about the swivel seat. As a broker, we always talked about the one screen solution, right? If you're sitting in, you're booking loads, you're selling to the shippers, right? You're doing that cradle to grave type of a business. But we don't really talk about the other departments within the brokerage and their password fatigue, because I think that is something that we just all have. It's just I have so many passwords and I have no idea.
I think one thing that helps frame like what I do is if you think about everything, all that work that you do after the freight is delivered, no broker ever signed up to do that work.
No.
Why did you start a freight brokerage? Why do you love freight? Because you love the thrill of the hunt. You love finding the deals. You love chasing the freight.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to count the money. Nobody wants to make the invoice. And that's not why we got into this industry.
You're talking about 50 loads a day too, right? 50 loads a day, 20 working days a month. That's 1,000 invoices that you're sending out.
And I'll be honest, guys, if I didn't marry the person that I married, I don't think I would have ever discovered how deep of a problem this was. But my wife would never let me off the hook from all the promises that I made in the business that I just dumped on the back office. And growing up at Worldwide Express, we were taught to say yes and ask questions later. And so, when I took that approach in my own business, and then I was the one underwriting the back office costs, and moreover is like I'm dumping this terrible work on the person who in the world that I love and respect the most, and she's actually telling me the truth for the very first time in my life, saying like, I don't think we're making money on these accounts. We got people doing this work. And so when you think about that, like, that's really what's happened. That's a microcosm of what's really happened in our industry over the last 5 or 6 years. Is everybody tried the BPO thing, you move everything to Philippines or Colombia or whatever, and there's value there, right? There's merit there. But you can't move everything over. and the time zone lag and the latency and losing a day here and there. These things don't play in finance. Every day you delay sending out an invoice is the day that you're not going to get paid. And in our business, we're paying out every day. The trucks have to keep moving, have to keep the carrier showing up. So I think it's a really good time for us to be thinking about this white space right there.
Right.
The freight's delivered before the money's in the bank. What are all those little tiny nips and cuts that we can make that'll just help you keep a couple extra bucks in your account as opposed to sitting in your customers?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The offshore. It was a good segue, right? Is taking higher salaries here in the U.S., moving that over. But I think the AI kind of revolution is eliminating not everything, right? But
I agree. But I would also say I think those BPOs are very smart to be thinking about what AI relationships can they leverage now to avoid the disruption.
Yep.
So we know all the usual suspects in our industry, the folks that have stood up great BPO services, really helped many of our friends' companies scale. And we're in late stage talks with most of these folks right now about figuring out how do we leverage our technology to make your team in the near shore way more effective, superpower those efforts, but bring that visibility and that top level data, surface that back up to the folks at the mothership, and make sure that everybody's singing from the same sheet of music when it comes to revenue. So I think digital tools like ours will continue to support the globalization of our operations. And I don't think it's going to be possible to truly reduce your cost to serve as low as you can without this type of tool.
Right, exactly. Like you've got to find a way, this instance is a great example of it, to give that back office hero, give your wife the opportunity to handle the shit that gives her some self-worth in her job, right? She wants to go solve problems probably on those exceptions much more, right, than she wants to do the mundane shenanigans that a lot of these folks have to deal with because they've got the wrong naming convention on the PDF or whatever it may be. It's I think there is a world, certainly is a world in this space where you can use the AI to make those people's lives a lot happier, make them a lot more productive, a lot more likely probably to continue to be happy and work for your business and help you scale. So yeah, I think this is certainly an instance where it's applicable, and it's cool that you guys are thinking about it that way, right? It's I think you just got to make people's lives easier, make them happier. It's AI is not necessarily taking jobs away from folks. It's just surfacing those, moments of those tasks in their workday that are really the best use of their time.
I like to think about it, in logistics, there's these common issues that come up and they create these repeatable challenges in your relationship with your customers. And I think the hallmark of a great logistics pro is somebody who really gets deep on that problem and they go upstream and they solve the root cause. But I think in finance, oftentimes this invoice not getting paid because the reference was wrong or there's no bill of lading attached or we said we never got the invoice. I think those things are really just annoyances. And I think to your point, Casey, I think about my wife, I think about these women who are working in my customers and my clients that they want to do right. They want shit to work. And if there's a problem that happens twice, they're smart enough to remember it and they're embarrassed by it. And I think too many people in logistics you're just drinking from the fire hose. You see the same problem twice. There's no pattern recognition because you're just down in the weeds all the time. And so what I really like to think about, Casey, and I think one thing that you just unlocked for me as I was thinking about is I like to think about giving people time back to go upstream and solve the problem. Because you're right. My wife is dangerous in front of the customer. And if there's a repeatable, sustainable problem that's happening, her time is much better suited, getting on the plane and going to get in front of that customer and say, hey, let's work together upstream. Let's figure this thing, right? But if you're constantly just adjusting reference numbers, you're constantly manipulating PDF files, you're not doing that work. So I think that's where AI is going to be really interesting, just like the Industrial Revolution, right? We got automation in place. And it's not like people didn't have jobs. They just started thinking more. They started doing more, And I think AI is going to be a big unlock for us in that. I'd also say that Like I've used similar tools in other businesses before, and there's a real value to your business if you can repurpose a budget dollar from an administrative, non-revenue producing role, and you go put that dollar into a sales guy. That changes things, you know.
It does. Dramatically changes things. It really does. What other applications are you seeing in logistics for AI? Things that are tangible today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on. Like
really exciting for tomorrow too.
Yeah. I think I think load building is one that has been really interesting over the years. I think I was trying to solve that back at Manning's by using RPA bots and things like this. But now enter Vuma, enter DrumKit. Like there's companies that are out there living in the inbox and taking data and building really, really cool applications. I think voice is going to take over, guys. I think there's a lot of opportunities in voice. I sit on the board of Basic Block where we're using AI robo dialers to call in verified load details for a factoring company to be able to recognize, the liabilities and risks. So I think that's really, really impressive. And then of course, like our friends at Highway and what they're doing on the AI side on just the carrier fraud and the risk. I mean, there was so much stuff happening in carrier fraud and risk. And then when Highway came out, they just have taken such a much more, I guess in my outside looking in view, they've taken just a much more aggressive path. And so they're a company that I admire a lot. And Jordan's somebody who I look up to and think like, we need to be on the same trajectory as those guys and working to scale as fast as them. And I think the other group that's really, really interesting right now is the guys at ION, ISO, that are doing the carrier scorecarding. And I think these are all the applications where AI just makes so much sense because with the vast amount of raw data that you have to ingest to be able to make sense of these things, it's the perfect use case for large language models. It's a perfect application for being able to throw in a bunch of data. And these LLMs are getting so intuitive and so smart that you're getting really insightful feedback and commentary on these things. So we're using LLMs in almost every single facet of our business because when I first started deciding that I want to build this company, I thought I don't want to do documents. I want to stay out of that. The OCR and all that stuff is terrible. But with the advancement of the LLMs, we were able to build the documents and put it to work and make them within a year and a half. And it's a really, really impressive solution. So I think that logistics and healthcare are probably the two spaces where large language models and AI are going to come in and make the most material difference in our lives in terms of things that we can see and touch and feel. It's happening in legal right now, but I think it's just making us lawyers. But I think what we're going to see is the quality of our healthcare, the access to quality foods, a lot of things that we need to do. Okay, thank you. I'll have another. But I think we're really starting to see some traction in these areas, and it's such a great time to build, guys. There's never been a time like this.
Yeah, I've been using AI a little bit more in loading up a spreadsheet and saying, well, tell me some interesting things. I want to do this, and instead of having to go in and do all the formulas and do that just on a small scale data, and it's working out pretty well. I completely agree. This tsunami of net data that is out there right now in logistics, if you're talking about telematics, all the loads, all the rates, everything is just too much. And it goes with healthcare too, right? It's just too much data for people to do. But you roll out AI into that and you start seeing trends that no one's seen before. And then you can start solving these huge problems that we've all talked about for years.
Yeah, so I get really excited about those things because the first step in our business, we had to create this integration layer where we could get in all this data and all these things from these different places. But now we've got, an army of just amazing customers, design partners that are working with us, and they're letting us stand over there and understand this waterfall of work flows that they go through. When this thing doesn't work the way it's supposed to, then we try this method and then we try this. And so this is the really fun part is now we're starting to build these AI enabled workflows where, as an example, one of our first enterprise customers was having a real problem getting documents uploaded into CAS, which is a major payer of invoices. Yep. And once the documents were there, they just weren't getting payment statuses back fast enough. And that was leading to delayed payments. And this was from a very large customer. So 3-4 days DSO on a big account, that'll make or break your month. And so as we started working with the team, in our first enterprise customer, they would tell us, hey, sometimes these just get rejected and you just resubmit it the next day and it just gets approved. And so we started to take these steps and we started saying, hey, if this gets rejected, then resubmit it. And then the next flow was change the file name. And like all of these things would change. Oh, Casey, I guess it's 5 o'clock somewhere. We're too good of friends for you to let me drink by myself, I guess.
Exactly. You're an inspirational fellow, Charlie.
So nevertheless, like now that we're starting to understand this cascade of events that happen, is we can use AI to build all of these things. And at the end of the day, our customers are really, really tickled with the approach that we're taking, and we're getting great feedback. And the most important part of it is that we're seeing more freight bills, more dollars invoiced, because we're taking this work off their plate. So they want to give us more.
Right. Some of the rules are funny, like, just, turn it off, turn it back on, plug it back in, take the cartridge out, and, your 007 N64 game will work. You'll get paid for your invoice. But, I'm sure there are a lot of other instances, right, where, you're actually picking up, more substantial rules or helping folks, find the right naming convention to not land in the abyss of somebody's payment portal that you can land in if you don't have the right, formatting on your document, right?
It just makes me so happy that I have friends like you guys that will talk freight billing with me and like get into the weeds of freight payment portals and actually like care about it. And I just think it doesn't get really much better than that.
Right. It's like the money does not flow quickly enough in this industry, and it genuinely, it chaps my ass. Probably not as much as it bothers, your wife or a lot of these folks that are sitting in chairs trying to chase bills, or as much as it bothers like some of these brokers that are trying to grow, but getting growing pains because the cash can't flow quickly enough for them. Right. Like that's another theme that I think we talked about earlier on in the show, Kev. It's like, why is it hard for the big guys to get paid?
Yep.
I don't know, but it is.
It is. That's the one thing, right? The three of us could start a brokerage tomorrow, right? And it wouldn't cost us hardly anything to start it, right? A few subscriptions, and we're talking like $2,000 or $3,000 a month for all of us, right? The one impediment to growth is working capital. And a brokerage is like a bank. Kyle Wilson tells me that. Brokerage is like a bank, and it's all about cash coming in and cash going out. And you go out and Charlie sells, a contract to Home Depot, and all of a sudden you're scrambling how we're going to get more cash to float. And that's it.
I mean, you just described the biggest constraint to our growth in my last brokerage that I turned around. I got a big award from my biggest customer, and I call my investors, telling them how excited, how happy I am. Thank you, sir. How happy I am that we are able to, take on this new piece of business. The first thing my investors say is like, "Where are we going to get the working capital?" And like immediately, I'm just like, "Why are you bringing me down? I just want this freight, and can't we just figure this out?" But it's like necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so as we started to go to the market in 2000, I guess 14, 18, looking for some working capital, you got your traditional factoring methodology, which I didn't want to give up control of my receivables. I didn't want somebody else calling my customer. That was a core competency for me. So that was just not going to work. And at that time, Triumph was coming out with their payment product to get payables off of the balance sheet of the brokers. And that provided some liquidity. That was interesting. But really outside of like the payment providers, there hasn't been much evolution in access to working capital. And what most brokers do, Kevin, if we went and started a brokerage, what we'd probably do is we'd call our local credit union and we'd talk to our buddy, and he'd give us whatever off-the-shelf revolver that we're using. We're accessing the same terms of liquidity that, somebody that owns a 7-Eleven or somebody that owns a car wash. We're all getting the same capital product, knowing theirs isn't the same. My needs are going to be way different than theirs. And so as I really started to think through the opportunity to help folks use their own capital, really I started sharing that vision with large banks and payers of invoices. And they started giving me the positive affirmations that, hey, if you can build this, we want to partner with you because we want to support the small broker. We want to give the broker our cash right now. But there's not a lot of entry points in logistics for capital to flow. And I think a lot of folks have taken the wrong approach and tried to put working capital solutions, whether it's trade finance or factoring, through the TMS. And the TMS is just such a limited part of the financial workflow. There's this whole other world out there of payment portals and your accounting software and all this payment data. Because really, at the end of the day, to underwrite a brokerage, to put money to work in a brokerage, I'm not underwriting the broker. I'm underwriting the creditworthiness of the underlying customers. So if your customers are all in one industry that's heavily levered to some financial circumstance that might hurt us, we as a bank cannot lend to you. So what we've done at Upwell is we work closely with these banks to say, what is the information that you need on this customer profile? How can we take this information and package it up for you in a way that gives you a single pane of glass to look at the health of a business and brokerage, and then offer them a product that's appropriately suited for their stage of business, for their needs. And so this is the opportunity that I get really, really excited about.
Yeah.
Is our customers are coming to us today saying, hey, we've got billing problems. We got way too many people in the back office, and I need to get some of my day back. And as we go and we help them continue to improve their DSOs and their cash positions get stronger, I'd like to think that we'll be able to help our customers access the premium capital that is only reserved for the fastest growing and the best brokers that are out there today. But that's the type of broker that it's worth the bank's time to go in and underwrite because of all the legwork that goes in up front. Because if they have to go and look through your 1,000 customers to see if they can underwrite you, that's a big pain. And so I think we can help with that connectivity very, very soon.
Well, that's perfect. That is, help with the underwriting, and then you also have the SOP in place in your back office to give the bank a little bit more extra juice to be comfortable.
I think the other trend that we're really riding the wave on right now, besides this inflationary environment where folks are just forced to look at their working capital, is there's a massive transition happening from an aging perspective in our industry. And a lot of these folks in the back office, the payables and receivable folks, they're getting well into their 50s, 60s, 70s. And we're seeing it again and again. A lot of our small broker customers are folks who maybe the son has bought the brokerage from his father in the last 5 years, or there's already been a generational transition that's happened in the organization. And one of my customers who I wish I would have asked him beforehand if I could use his name, because I would love to tell this guy's story, but we got on the phone with him, and I always like to ask my prospects when we get on the phone, hey, what was it about our email that was interesting enough to get you to take the call today? And he told me right off the bat, he's like, look, I spend 80 to 90% of my day right now in finance, and so I have to look at every tool that I can. And so as we started to really unpack this process, it was obvious. This guy in his early mid-30s, he's just getting his life and his career going with his family. He bought the business from his dad, and he's looking at this workflow between Algix and QuickBooks Desktop going, to hell with this. I'm not doing this. Because people at that generation, they're intolerant of time wasting. They're intolerant of manual tasks. And I've been waiting, because now I'm the old guy in the industry, right? But when I was the young guy, I was waiting for my people to get here so we can all change things together. But now that's happened, so I'm just glad that I'm at least still in the game and I get to see, these folks getting what they want.
Yeah, no one buys a brokerage to do accounting. I mean, the last thing you want to do is spend 80% of your time trying to sort out invoices and who's been paid, who needs to pay. I mean,
for guys like us, guys, let's be honest, that's soul sucking work.
Oh yeah. No.
If that was a fundamental requisite of me being successful, there's no way I could find success if I had to be an accountant. No way.
No, I do my books about twice a year. I mean, it's just tough to do.
Yeah.
But I got to run here in a couple minutes. I got a 2:00 call. I got to go do. So do we want to kind of wrap it up here? Everyone in a good spot to do that.
I don't know. How do you guys do this? Do we do a cheer or what do we do?
I don't know. Charlie, thanks for coming on. And how does our audience reach out and learn more?
So we'd love to have you stop by upwell.com, check out what we're doing. You can also just check me out at charliedehoney.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn or X. Coming to a Freight Tech event near you. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys out in Chattanooga, I'm sure, at F3. And this time of the journey in the company, I'm on the road somewhere selling some freight services, some freight technology somewhere in the country every week. So you'll see me.
You coming out to Broker Carrier Summit here in a couple weeks?
I will be at Broker Carrier Summit in a couple weeks. So we'll see
What about
you there.
there?
What do you say?
You gonna be in Jacksonville next week for TIA by any chance?
I am not. I'm taking 1 week off. I have not been home in about 16 days. So I'm going to be laying low next week, back on the road to California and the Broker Carrier Summit the following week, and then pretty much every week until Thanksgiving.
Cool. Charlie, always a pleasure. And soon you in a couple weeks. I'll see you down here in Fort Worth in a couple weeks. So
Kevin, thank you for the friendship over the years as my former boss at Freight Waves. It's really great to stay in touch, and I appreciate all you do. And Casey, happy for you, man. It's good to see you catching your stride over there at Fairlanes, and they got lucky to get you.
Thanks, Charlie. Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
No doubt, man. Tell John I said hi. We'll see you guys.
You too. Thanks, Charlie.